Hi everybody, it's Natalie from Outside Lives. We wanted to talk to you a little bit this morning about Veganuary, something that we're going to be getting involved in as part of Outside Lives during the month of January. Since 2014, Veganuary has inspired more than 1 million people across 192 countries to think about a more plant-based diet. And we're really excited to talk to Kat, our operations director, this morning about some of the changes that she's made to her diet over the years. And she does follow a pretty much 100% plant-based diet. What we wanted to do is to inspire people to think about making small changes. You don't need to think about becoming 100% vegan. But one of the things that we are really inspired by or really conscious of at the moment is that making any small changes is beneficial to our health and also ultimately to the planet that we live on. So January is all about Veganuary for us, and Kat is the first person we're going to talk to in this short series of videos. And Kat, I'm going to ask you a few questions, if that's okay, on the plant-based diet that you follow. So Kat, welcome.
Hello.
Can you tell me a little bit about your current diet, Kat?
Yeah, so as you said, I'm pretty much plant-based. On an odd occasion, I will eat some seafood, perhaps a little bit of fish, but it's quite rare these days.
Yeah.
And I do eat honey, and I do wear things made out of wool as well. So I wouldn't ever say I was vegan, but yeah, my diet is pretty much now probably 99% plant-based.
Okay, and how has it changed over the years, and why has it changed, do you think?
So I was vegetarian since I was 9 years old. So that was about 20 years ago now. And maybe 20 more. Yeah, so I've been vegetarian since I was 9. I went vegetarian because I just didn't want to I didn't want anything on my plate to have had to have lost its life to be there, really, and that's why I decided. I think as the years have gone by, I have had a lot more of an issue with the intensive farming methods that I have to use to keep up with people's demand for meat, and the fact that people don't want to pay for meat, so they're forced to make meat cheaper, and unfortunately that has an impact on the welfare standards of how meat has to be raised. So from my perspective, I've always had family that have eaten meat, and I will cook meat, but I would only cook sort of organic meat for that reason. And then vegetarian for a long time, and then I think it was about 3 or 4 years ago. Actually, my colleague at the time that I used to sit next to, his wife went vegan, and he started telling me all these things about the dairy industry that I hadn't ever really considered before.
Yeah.
And I just sort of woke up one day and thought, I'm not going to eat any dairy today, and that just continued. So there wasn't like a moment that I said, right, I am going to be vegan or anything like that. It was just it's not for me today, that
Yeah.
And it's just sort of carried on like that, really.
Brilliant. So have you found anything difficult about including more plants in your diet, do you think?
I think it's becoming so easy to include more plant-based stuff in your diet. I think with the level of sort of substitutes that are available now in supermarkets from when I first became a vegan or a plant-based, really it was pretty much soya milk and that was it. I mean, now there's soya milk, there's almond milk, there's hazelnut milk, there's Oatly, there's or oat milk, there's just this huge range of coconut milk, huge range of alternatives, and I think that's what we've seen. And I think the one thing about that is difficult is if you're always used to cooking around a piece of meat as your center point for a dish, then it becomes very difficult to imagine or reimagine a dish without that center point of protein in the center of it. And I think that's why, you know, a lot of the meat substitutes are so popular, because it's becomes a lot. You don't need to develop a whole different stack of recipes or way of looking at food to just swap out a meat protein for, you know, a meat substitute protein. You can basically cook the same dishes that you want to. So yeah, so I think the challenges that previously you've had to have potentially learned a whole different repertoire of recipes. I think now that is not so much the case, albeit, you know, I think for a long time I've relied upon, you know, meat substitutes, even as a vegetarian. And then in more recent years, I've learned a lot more about cooking with plants in a different way, to just, you know, I'm going to swap out this sausage for a vegan sausage, you know, and that's been really interesting, and it's something that I'm trying to do a lot more of, because I'm really trying to cut down on you know, the processed sort of food that we're buying.
Yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes it's almost the first step, isn't it? When you decide to make some changes, maybe going for things that they look like the things that you are missing or trying to avoid, I suppose. I guess it's a progression, isn't it? The more comfortable you get, the easier it is to produce recipes that, you know, aren't reliant on those processed elements, but it's still a step in the right direction, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah.
Is there anything else that's made it easier, do you think? I know it's more accessible now in the supermarkets. As you say, there's a lot more choice, but is there anything else out there that's made that transition easier? Because I know your husband is going to be part of this series as well, but he is not plant-based, but is starting to follow a lot more of a plant-based diet.
Yeah, I mean, he's a lot more focused on the health side of things, and I won't give it all away, because but yeah, I mean, he when I met him, he ate a huge amount of meat. I mean, I think there's a few other things that have made it easier. I mean, I think, you know, it'd be remiss not to talk about the options in respect of vegan food now. I mean, I remember when I turned vegetarian at the age of 9, you know, my poor mum had to sort of ring up a lot of restaurants. Do you do anything on your menu that's vegetarian? And, you know, that changed, and you would never expect to go to a restaurant without a vegetarian option. But probably 5 years ago, from a vegan or plant-based perspective, it was exactly the same. You know, you would have to ring up the restaurant and say, is there anything you can do? But it's become, you know, that now it's become a lot easier. Most sort of eateries, if you want to go out for a meal or get a takeaway, will have, you know, at least one vegan option, and increasingly we're seeing more than one plant-based option on a menu. You don't just have to sit there and eat a bowl of chips while everybody else is cooking it.
And a lot of, I guess, specific vegan restaurants and takeaways opening up as well. I mean, certainly I don't follow 100% plant-based diet, but we quite regularly have vegan takeaways, and they are absolutely delicious. So yeah, I think it's, you know, it is much more accessible now, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, my kids are both quite young, and they're pescatarian, and that's easy as well now, because there's 3 of us that eat the same thing, really.
Yeah.
There's a takeaway local to us that sells their own sourdough pizzas. And they do the exact same range as a vegan pizza. So your meat options and your vegan options are identical. and they are delicious. I mean, a lot of vegan cheese can be pretty dodgy. Their stuff is brilliant. It really is. And the kids eat the vegan options rather than the dairy ones. Yeah.
So if we have a think about maybe some of the important ingredients then for you, what are your staples? What are your favourite plant-based ingredients for everyday cooking? If someone was going to think about following Veganuary, is there anything that they should have in their pantry as a staple?
Yeah. I guess it depends what sort of food you're into. I mean, I'll take this from my mum. This is one of my mum's top tips. She does big tray bakes of roasted vegetables.
Yeah.
And then she takes those roasted vegetables and puts them in the freezer, portions them up and puts them in the freezer. And then, if I turn up or plan to, go down and stay, she'll take those out and she can turn those roasted veg into chili. She makes lasagnas. She'll just serve it as a side. I mean, that's genius, because roasted vegetables in any sort of dish like that is just so much better than veg that hasn't been roasted. I mean, they are delicious. So I would say, do some big tray bakes of veg, get it in the freezer, because we don't all have time to, make gourmet. Well, I certainly don't gourmet food every night. So something like that is a really good idea. I think, if you want to try some vegan baking, then there's a lot of recipes for cakes where they'll use non-dairy yogurts as like a binder, and something called flax eggs, which I think a tablespoon of milled flax seeds to 3 tablespoons of warm water, and then you leave it to sit for 15 minutes. And that's the equivalent to 1 egg. So if you want to put 2 eggs in, you put that in, and that will give you the rise, along with some baking powder. Using either dairy-free butter or oil in those cakes as well. So really lovely recipes for cakes out there. Definitely worth, if you're into baking, having a try of that. That's what I would say. And and if you're going to try Veganuary, try some of the meat substitutes as well. Make it easy for yourself. Don't try and freak yourself out by having to learn a different way of cooking. I would say, I think the Bosch books, the plant-based Bosch books, are absolutely brilliant. If you want some recipes, they've got loads different. We've got Bish Bash Bosch, the original Bosch. I think there's one called Speedy Bosch now, which is just out. Have a look if you want some plant-based inspiration. I can't recommend those books more highly. So check those.
Brilliant. Well, that's some expert advice, I think, there, Kat. And it's been great to talk to you about some of the progressions that you've made over the years. And I think, the really interesting and important thing is that it doesn't have to be difficult. You do what is right for you. You do small steps, take small steps. They actually ultimately mean that it makes some big progress with regards to your own health and the health of the planet, and that is what we're all about, what we're trying to focus on at the moment. So thank you very much for talking to us, and we look forward to talking to some more people around Veganuary throughout the course of the next couple of weeks. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Nat.